Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Friday Night Live. Subhanallah, it's Friday, it's 1st of October 2021, corresponding to the 23rd of Safar, the second month in the Islamic calendar, 1443. As usual, we are broadcasting live. We are broadcasting live to Luton on 105.1 FM, inshallah. And of course, we are also broadcasting live across our partner stations, including Sheffield Link FM, Peterborough, Salam, Derby, Nottingham. To our listeners across the nation, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. For listeners who are tuned in via any of the social media platforms, again, Assalamu alaikum to yourselves too on Inspire FM app or via the Inspire FM website. We are always broadcasting live on Facebook. We are also broadcasting live on YouTube, so tune in. Do remember to like tonight's show. Do remember to leave a comment, leave your thoughts. Interesting to hear what you make of tonight's show, inshallah. Tune in, most importantly, join tonight's discussion, join tonight's debate, conversation. Get your voices here, get your points of view across to our panelists. We are going to be discussing some interesting topics, as we always do on Friday Night Live. I don't need to tell you that. I'm sure you agree. Your thoughts, opinions do count. 01582 481822. 01582 481822. 0779 481822 is the number here in the studio for your social media messages. Now, I want to hear from our listeners tonight because we're going to be discussing the fuel crisis. We're going to be starting off with the fuel crisis with a local perspective, Luton perspective. What did you make of the fuel, or what do you make of the fuel crisis? I'm sure everyone's got an opinion on what's been happening at the moment. I mean, it's not so much as a fuel shortage as we've actually made it into a crisis, and locally it's been horrendous because so many of the fuel pumps have all been shut for so many days. We're going to be speaking to our local guest, Tony Island, who's a senior council officer at the Luton Borough Council, strategic regulatory manager, and he's been involved in managing the fuel station crisis here in Luton. So if you've got a question, if you've got a comment, if you've got an opinion on this issue, 01582 481822, 0779 481822. We've got a whole host of other topics we're going to be covering tonight. Let me go through those very, very soon. Right, so we're going to be kicking off tonight's show with the local fuel crisis, getting an update from, of course, as I was just saying earlier, our Luton Borough Council representative, Tony Island, who's going to be giving us an update of what's happening locally and what are we doing to try to stem this crisis and turn it into a more orderly approach in terms of how we take and consume fuel, well, at least our vehicles consume fuel. We're also going to be discussing Pakistan. Right, Pakistan seems to be on our topic every other week. UK court issues order to unfreeze Shaban Sharif's family's bank accounts. Right, so the Sharif families and their bank accounts are never too far from making headlines. So we're going to be discussing what's going on and why the Sharifs can't stay out of the news. We're also going to be discussing mental health, but with a special focus on men, right, who suffer from mental health. A very, very important topic, I believe, right? And it's something that we need to discuss and address it. Mental health generally, but especially when it comes to men, because it's a kind of area which is a bit of a taboo when it comes to mental health and men. So we're going to be discussing that with a few experts and getting their view and their thoughts on that subject matter. And last but not least, we're going to be discussing Muslims living in France, right? Muslims living in France. We're going to be getting an update on what's been happening in France when it comes to the Muslim community. So that's your lineup for this evening. 01582 481822, 0779 481822. Right, let's go straight to our first story. Right. I believe Tony has joined us on tonight's show. And as I was saying, I want to reach out to my listeners. I want to get your perspective. I want to get your stories, your horror stories, or your positive stories with regards to fuel availability locally. Now, I mean, this is a crisis that we're seeing nationally. So it's just not a Luton problem by any stretch of the imagination, right? But you know what? I've been doing a bit of traveling over the last couple of days. I can tell you that last weekend I was in Leeds. All right. So I've got a bit of a comparison to make when it comes to how we're faring in Luton, but I can't quite compare Luton with Leeds. I mean, one's a town, one's a city. You're bound to get few more options available to you in Leeds, but locally, our last couple of days is I'm sure as many of our local community would have experienced is it's been a challenge getting fuel. Many of the local petrol stations have been closed, right? A few that have been opened have been subject to, a great deal of pressure. There's been a lot of, there's been huge, horrendous queues forming in terms of the cars outside the fuel stations. And I mean, that's really been epitomized by a video that's gone viral, right? Drone footage revealing the true picture of search for fuel in Luton. Queues have been creating chaos in the area around Wigmore, right? So with that opening, let me go straight to Tony and welcome Tony to the show. Tony, hi, welcome to Friday Night Live. Good to see you.
Good evening, and you. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. Fantastic. So I believe you're, of course, a senior council officer at the Luton Borough Council. Fantastic. I don't think we've had you on the show before, so great to have you on the show. We have had Luton Borough Council many times, which is great. And Tony, I understand that you've been involved in trying to manage this fuel situation here in Luton, and I my sympathies go to you because it hasn't been an easy job, has it?
No, not at all. And firstly, I'd like to say that obviously we recognise that it's been an anxious time for residents and businesses within Luton, just because of trying to get fuel and all of the difficulties, as you quite rightly said. It's a changing picture all the time, so it's very difficult.
Right. So I'm sure a lot of our listeners are going to have a lot of opinions to share, right? So I'm looking forward to hearing the opinions from our listeners, right? What could we have done better? What have been your experiences so far, right? Anything that you can suggest, then please do send a message to me, 0779 481 But firstly, Tony, let me ask you the question. I mean, you've been involved in managing the fuel situation here locally. I mean, what has that involved for you over the last couple of days? I mean, it's probably just been added to your portfolio because no one, there was no job description for someone to manage the fuel situation here in Luton. It was business as usual until a few days ago.
Well, that's right. It's been last week now, I suppose. And as you quite rightly when you opened, you said about the drone footage, which I think was taken from Wigmore last Friday. Showed about a 2-mile tailback for people trying to get fuel when this all sort of really first kicked off. I think the first thing to say that the situation has improved. I think 75% now of the petrol stations do have petrol and diesel. But of course, demand is still outstripping supply at the time. So even when the messages go out on social media, etc., saying where the fuel is, actually within 45 minutes, the situation can change dramatically. So it's very difficult to keep on top of what the latest picture is for the fuel at each individual location.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we'll come on to that, right? Because there's just so much to cover. I mean, firstly, if we just look at it from a perspective of availability, so you're just saying that 75% of now the stations in Luton are operational with fuel. I mean, that of course is a figure that's constantly changing, isn't it? Because I drive past London Road for school drop-offs, and this morning there was fuel, and when I came back there was no fuel, so it was closed off, right? And I mean, it's almost unsustainable because the queues at that station have been horrendous because creating huge amounts of traffic, right? Backlog, right? But then when I drive through Bury Park and I'm trying to be observing over the last couple of days what the situation is, and I've been hearing from my neighborhood groups social media groups, 6, 7 of those, all of those stations still remain closed. I mean, a number of stations are still closed. So I mean, it is that issue, the bottleneck of supply, being addressed, and what can we do to ease off some of the pressure around some of the other fuel stations? I mean, especially the Wigmore one, that's really been under sustained pressure for the last couple of days, causing, I mean, quite a nuisance around that area for a lot of the people, residents living around there, surely.
Yeah, and I say the issues on the roads, congestion, sort of the vehicles queuing up has obviously been causing some issues for residents and businesses to get round.
Yeah.
With regards to the council services as well, getting care services out there, to, domiciliary care and all those sorts of elements, the nurses into the community, had additional difficulties as well for us and our health colleagues.
Yeah.
The main, as you quite rightly said, the main issue is this issue of supply, and that's being led by the fuel industry and still is. But of course, I think last weekend we saw demand rise to about 180%. 180% over above what we would normally expect. So actually, with that, the deliveries that would normally last, was on a supply and just in time supply situation, were just running out far quicker. And of course, the booked deliveries were several days, and I think that's been evident for some of those independent stations far more than some of the more sort of national groups we've seen were on some of the main routes as well. So the difficulty is that from a local authority point of view, and certainly from the residents and businesses, there is no actual control over this. It is really when those supplies arrive. We're still getting them through, as we've seen. They are coming in overnight. I think maybe the 24-hour stations are possibly suffering more than some of the other ones that have limited hours, because they are receiving fuel overnight and then open up at 6, 8 o'clock in the morning, and then there's good supply for a period of time. I think the element to stress to people is try and behave as normal. So if you don't normally fill up your car, don't go and fill up your car. Get the fuel that you would normally need. Try and ease that pressure a bit. Say it has, day by day, has improved, but we're certainly not there yet. And as you've seen that, and your listeners will have seen that. But what we don't want to happen over the weekend is for people to panic buy again, in effect, and then have the same issue, because obviously the deliveries are less over the weekend, and then we go into the situation that we saw this week. We then try to catch up. So really, try and behave as much as normal as possible. Fill up if you need to fill up, if you're going long distance, etc. We don't want people running out of fuel. But equally also allow yourself a bit more time. Don't do what I did, run it down to the point where I was running around on fumes, hoping that I'd find a station. I think we've all been guilty of that to an extent. So allow yourself a little bit more time to get fuel, but try and do that normally. And message from our fire colleagues is, please don't try and store fuel. It's a real risk. You can do it safely if it's properly contained, but actually, don't do it. There's more problem than it solves, basically.
I think the key message is to the listeners is, we understand everyone's frustrations, we understand that the problems, but this is a national kind of a mini crisis that we've had, and I think the key thing is, let's try to respond to it with some, with maturity, with a bit of common sense. Right, let's be mature about things. Right, if things are a bit difficult, let's see if we can use alternatives. Right, and let's just take it easy for a couple of days until things kind of settle down, please. I think that has to be the message, because there's a lot of frustration out there, and I've seen it actually, be taken out on others at the forecourts, and that's not, we don't want it there, right? And even though, I've been speaking to some of the people working at those forecourts, and they've been telling me that they've had a rough time. And as I say, I was driving back from Leeds a couple of days ago, and I stopped at a couple of forecourts, spoke to the people, the attendants working at there, and they just said they've had a horrendous experience with some of the customers. So I think we need to be a bit more patient, a bit more understanding. It's not the chap's fault or the lady's fault that's trying to serve you at the forecourt. it's a bigger issue that's not in my control or in Tony's control. So please try to bear with us, understand the situation, and just take. And I'm trying to be as normal as possible. I know it's a bit difficult to actually say that, isn't it? Be normal, but then someone says, well, you know, are you going to guarantee that there's going to be fuel available for me in 3 days or 4 days? Well, I can't guarantee that. Well, then I need to go and fill up now. You know, whereas normally I wouldn't do that. I just put 5-10 pounds of petrol, but now I'm going to go and put in 50 pounds of petrol. That's the kind of a situation that we've got, Tony, haven't we, on our hands?
Yeah, and some stations have put in some limits. So quite frequently now you're seeing limits of £45, depending on which station you're going to, and that, of course, is helping sort of keep the supplies flowing. And I'll have to say that actually the good citizens of Luton have been brilliant overall. Yes, there's obviously been some frustrations, especially if people have queued a long time and then get to the station and find they've run out by the time they've got there. But actually, in comparison to other areas of the country, and certainly even other areas of the county, you know, everybody's been on the whole brilliant, and have obviously sort of, you know, behaved really, really well, and we appreciate that. So that's been really positive.
No, great. That's good stuff. I mean, there's a question here, Tony, with regards to, I don't know to what extent, or even if it was in fact, right, because there's no evidence to suggest it, whether the council was working together with the police, right, to try to manage some of these bottlenecks areas. I mean, for example, the Wigmore situation. I mean, that's ridiculous because it was going back so back. The traffic was going back so far that there's a general, there's a genuine hazard there that's been created. There's a bottleneck of traffic of people that want to just use that, you know, that stretch of road. You know, you can't access the shopping areas if you want to actually go shopping and you're not interested in fuel. So wasn't there a point of intervention surely on behalf of the police and the council to say, you know what, we need to cut this off now and intervene, otherwise this is going to become ridiculous?
Yes, and all the agencies did come together. So we brought together a tactical group, and in fact all of the county areas did the same. We have a tactical group that meets, and that's representatives of police, fire, ambulance, council, health colleagues, etc. And also representatives from government as well, so that we can feed back any particular issues from the county-wide point of view. And actually, yes, the police did respond. They did have to put in road closures in some certain instances initially to deal with the queuing. But as we've seen, that has diminished, and as it, you know, it has improved. I think last Friday was probably the worst of it, which we saw, you know, A6, M1, key locations, certainly across the north of the county, were particularly affected, and obviously the queues at Wigmore, which got the drone footage for. But things have settled down. So there are smaller queues, and so, depending on the locations, most of the petrol stations or fuel stations are on key locations or roundabouts, etc. So some of those are causing a little bit more congestion than others. But actually, we found that there hasn't had to be that sort of police intervention with regards to trying to separate off. Actually, as I said, most people are being very courteous and you know, behaving well and understand, you know, completely understanding, and just taking that little bit of extra time to either get past the queue or to access shops, etc. So overall, it's very, very positive in that regard.
All right, good. And was there a case of you know, to discuss prioritization of, you know, key workers, NHS workers, you know, healthcare kind of officials? You know, because I mean, there was of course a national discussion, wasn't that there maybe there should be a scheme of, you know, that the fuel, you know, that there's a priority given to those kind of key workers, NHS workers, etc. We did when it came to the pandemic, right? And a lot of supermarkets kind of deployed that policy. Was that a conversation, a consideration that was being debated around those kind of circles of the council and the police at all, Tony? And
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a consideration, but I think the broader issue is that we have lots of people who are key and critical workers now. You know, people have to get into work. If they are also the people that are doing deliveries, or they're providing, you know, services at the shops, etc., then they are equally as, you know, key as others that we might sort of deem to be within the emergency services. I think the thing to say is that you know, a lot of our sort of domiciliary care and nurses are in unmarked vehicles. So again, how do we try and differentiate at those from normal sort of Joe Public, as it were, who would be trying to access fuel. So there's lots of issues around that. The majority of the emergency services have bunkered fuel, as do the council, and those supplies have been kept going throughout this. So actually, there's been no issues there. So therefore, no real additional demands. But of course, it does vary from area to area. So Luton has been fairly positive in that regard, but some of the rural areas, of course, don't have that luxury. So they'll be more reliant. The emergency services are more reliant on those services at the fuel stations. But again, it is really down to local discussion with the management of each individual station to see whether they're either keeping some reserves back or how they're dealing. And we've seen, the likes of Tesco's, etc., and other supermarkets, coming to local agreements to help support those people who desperately need the fuel, that provide those key services, regardless or not whether we would consider them to be emergency services or not. So that's been really positive. And those businesses have been really, really supportive.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought, and I actually heard that the rural areas were actually faring a lot better than the cities and the towns, because obviously they were continuing their business and their approach in their kind of a relaxed way and a more normal approach, right? And therefore, there's plenty of fuel in those forecourts, as opposed to the towns and cities where the panic has led to these horrendous queues. But there you go. I mean, it's good to hear the fact that at least the emergency services and the critical services in the areas, they haven't been impacted by the fuel, and that, thank God for that, because otherwise that could have created all sorts of challenges for us locally, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that, again, that's been really positive. It showed that the plans in place do work. But as I say, the issue here is that it's not a fuel shortage, which again makes it really a local decision. So services across Bedfordshire have come together to try and address that, and have looked to manage the situation in consultation with the local fuel stations.
Yeah, and what's the kind of next steps? And are you still is the next week plan just to kind of continue to observe and see how things are going? Are you expecting next week to be pretty much back to normal, hopefully, in the next couple of days? What's your kind of assessment of things? What the figures telling you? What's the analysis giving you?
Telling you? So so I think if things continue on the same line as we've seen over the last sort of 3 or 4 days, we would hope the situation to continue to improve. As you've heard on sort of the mainstream media, there's been support for the military sending out to hauliers, so there are additional drivers that are now conducting that work nationally. There's no indications whether Luton would be receiving more or less of that support. It will be down to the hauliers to decide how they deploy, and they're sort of in effect doing that sort of prioritization dependent on their deliveries. So with all of those, and if people do look to just carry on as much as they can as their normal behaviour, then we don't expect any additional problems over this weekend. There'll also obviously be an increased demand, and we're expecting that and dealing with that. We'll be coming back together as a tactical group next week to review this, see how we're progressing, and certainly we would hope that the situation will continue to improve. But if it doesn't, then we'll be there to work together and to work with our businesses and residents, etc., to look to see how we can manage that taking forward. But certainly at the moment, all of the indications are it's quite positive.
And last but not least, Tony, very quickly, any lessons learned from this latest kind of brief crisis, hopefully?
Yeah. Yes, I think it's quite surprising how quickly it starts, and I think it caught everybody on the back foot slightly. Thursday last week, I don't think we really thought anything was significantly going to happen, and that's across the board. And then all of a sudden, Friday came along, and we saw the queues. Given the drone footage for Wigmore, so I think there's a few lessons learned there, just to sort of do that bit more of maybe a horizon scanning. But actually, I think the key lesson learned is actually the plans have worked. And I think there's some elements about communications with central government, but I think, that's probably normally the case anyway.
Right.
But actually, everybody has come together and worked really well. So actually, I think that's been again positive.
Fantastic, Tony, Eileen. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, giving us the fantastic update. Keep up the good work, and we hope it's business as usual very, very soon when it comes to fuel and Luton. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Time.
Cheers. Thanks. Bye-bye, Tony. Right, listeners, that was Tony Island from the Luton Borough Council. Be very interested to hear your stories and your experiences with trying to get fuel locally. That was Tony Island, Senior Council Officer at Luton Borough Council, giving us his perspective. The message is try to behave and try to take fuel as you normally would do, right? And try not to hoard fuel in your car tank, as I know it's a bit difficult not to do that with the current crisis, but try to be as normal as possible. We're about to go into a commercial break. When we come back from the commercial break, inshallah, we will be discussing Pakistan, but don't go away. We're going to be right back, inshallah. Until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
This program will continue after the break. Continue listening to Inspire FM. Inspire FM.
Inspire 105.1 FM.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Isa Toy Mia. I'm from Islamic Help, and I just want to say every act of goodness is charity. So keep doing good, keep helping people, and be yourself. And stay tuned to Inspire 105.1 FM.
With over 20 years' experience, your first choice for accident claims must be Claims Specialists. Don't be fooled by other companies or solicitors who offer no deductions. You end up losing out on the compensation you deserve. At Claims Specialists, we ensure you receive the maximum compensation you're entitled to, with hundreds of cars, including taxis, available within 1 hour. Consult us first for a fast, efficient, and professional service. Find out how highly recommended Claims Specialists can get the best result for you. Call Luton 733 222. Click on claimspecialists.co.uk or visit us at 167A Dunstable Road in Luton.
वेस्टबोर्न फार्मेसी हफ्ते के 7 दिन सुबह 9 बजे से लेकर रात 9 बजे तक खुली रहती है। हमारी सर्विसेज में शामिल हैं ट्रैवल वैक्सीनेशंस, स्टॉप स्मोकिंग, डायबिटीज चेक, बच्चों की ग़िज़ा और बहुत कुछ। लुटन और डंस्टेबल में फ्री प्रिस्क्रिप्शन, पिकअप और डिलीवरी सर्विसेज भी की जाती है। इसके अलावा आप मेडिसिन के इस्तेमाल के लिए फ्री मशवरा भी ले सकते हैं। वेस्टबोर्न फार्मेसी 198 B Dunstable Road, Luton, corner of Westbourne Road. Telephone 01582 419 432.
We're taught that when you leave the house, you say, Bismillahi, tawakkaltu ala Allah. In the name of Allah, I lay my trust in Allah.
अगर आपको 3 हफ्तों या उससे भी ज्यादा अरसे से खांसी की शिकायत है और ये कोविड-19 भी नहीं है, तो इसे हरगिज नजरअंदाज मत कीजिए। हो सकता है ये फिक्र की बात ना हो, लेकिन ये कैंसर की निशानी भी हो सकती है। कैंसर जल्द पकड़ लिया जाए तो इसके इलाज के ज्यादा चांसेस होते हैं। आपका NHS आपको देखना चाहता है। अपने GP से राब्ता कीजिए। Help us help you.
Sadly, millions of orphans living in the poorest countries lack the necessary support for a healthy childhood. These children have to endure lives of hardship without the basic necessities that will help them to grow, to learn, to live. Let's show them that we do care. Let's brighten up their future. Call 0161 225 0225 or visit humanappeal.org.uk.
आजकल एक नया फ्रॉड चल रहा है। आपको मुख्तलिफ लोग मुख्तलिफ कंपनियों और मुख्तलिफ बैंकों के नाम से टेलीफोन करते हैं और आपको लॉटरी जीतने की खुशखबरी देते हैं और फिर जोनसा देकर आपसे रकम वसूल करके भाग जाते हैं। ऐसे तमाम फोन कॉल से होशियार रहें। इंस्पायर एफएम कम्युनिटी अवेयरनेस मैसेज।
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 6:30.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Friday Night Live. It is Friday the 1st of October 2021. 1st of October, it means winter is upon us and the short days are upon us, just around the corner. But anyway, until then, we are of course broadcasting live on Friday on Inspire FM 105.1 FM, and of course we're also broadcasting live across some of our partner stations across the UK, live on Facebook and YouTube, or 1582 481822 0779 0779 481822. Do remember to like us on tonight's show. Leave us your comments and leave us your thoughts. 01582 481822 0779 481822. Right, first half an hour we were discussing the fuel crisis in the UK, but more from a Luton perspective. Would be interested to hear your thoughts and your experiences with regards to that particular issue. But we are going to be moving on to our next story this evening, and we're going to be discussing a couple of headlines that caught my attention this week. Right, and that is the Sharif families again back in the news. I mean, the Sharif families seems that they can't stay away from making headlines, right? For some reason, right? We're going to be speaking to a couple of panelists, couple of experts who are no strangers to Friday Night Live. But before I introduce them, what are the headlines that I'm referring to? UK court issues order to unfreeze Shaban Sharif family's bank accounts. Now, I was a bit surprised when it said unfreeze. I thought it's normally always freeze bank accounts, right? But anyway, it seems like there was a separate investigation based upon some suspicious activity, right? That the UK crime agency investigated, and then it reported back to find no evidence of corruption, money laundering, or criminal activities against Shaban Sharif. Now that's quite an incredible statement, actually. No evidence of corruption, money laundering, or criminal activities against Shaban Sharif. Wow, he must be a very happy man. So a British court on Monday ordered authorities to unfreeze the bank accounts belonging to PML and President Shaban Sharif and his son Suleiman Sharif. Okay, but then there's another article that again Shaban Sharif's wife, on the other hand, Nusrat, it was indicted in a money laundering case. An accountability court in Lahore on Friday indicted Nusrat Shabazz, the wife of leader of the opposition in the National Assembly, Shaban Sharif, in a money laundering reference filed by the National Accountability of the Bureau in December last year. Nusrat was declared absconder by accountability. Of course, she is currently in London. All right, so it's the Sharif families that can never stay away from their headlines, and especially when it comes to this particular headlines around money laundering, right? So what's going on? Let's try to get a latest perspective on this. And there's obviously no surprise there in some of those headlines. We're getting a bit used to it. Anyway, we're going to be speaking to Shagufta Akhtar, TV journalist, anchor, and columnist based in Nottingham, member of the Pakistan's Press Club UK. So welcome, Shagufta, to Friday Night Live. Great to have you back with us. I think you've been with us before. We've also got Abu Isra, who is, of course, a political commentator, analyst, and an executive who's going to be joining us from Pakistan. And he's going to be joining us on audio. So assalamu alaikum to both of you. Let me go first to you, Shagufta, and welcome you firstly to the show. And it seems like the Sharif families can't stay away from headlines, and especially headlines related to financial corruption.
Assalamu alaikum, man. Thank you for calling me on the show. It's always a pleasure to be here and discuss some of the goings on in Pakistani politics, which even on a good day is always very interesting, because PTI government, Imran Khan, has vowed to rule out corruption from every bit of his country that he possibly can. And to that end, there's always some kind of political opponent making headlines. And in this instance, we have Shahbaz Sharif, president of PMLN, and he made the headlines, really, that came to the British authorities back in September 2019 with The Guardian. And that was when the rest of us, who don't really show too much of an interest in what's happening in Pakistani politics, because we're quite, we'd like to discuss British politics. When we read about this in The Guardian, we actually thought, okay, is there some truth to this? Is what we see on the Pakistani headlines and Pakistani news channels actually true? Because, we have this issue about fake reporting, which happens quite a lot. The Guardian reported on this in September 2019. And the headline at that time was that Pakistani government was the one under fire for owing £17 million or something to that tune to the anti-corruption agency for investigating the Sharif's family's assets on Avonfield, their properties there. And usually when there's an anti-corruption charge, it usually goes back in investigation terms for about 7 years, but this spanned back over 20 years. So really, the book got thrown at them. There was an extensive, full 2-page, 3-page details of exactly what the Sharif family owned. And they were charged, or the charges were with corruption, with money laundering, with dishonesty in their financial transactions.
Right.
That went into some great details of investigation, with obviously the Sharif family opposing this and saying that they were not guilty. And they insisted on that right the way through.
Sure. Let's thanks for that. Let me bring in Abu Isa. Abu Isa, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Good to have you with us, Abu Isa. Jazakallah for joining us this evening. I mean, whether it's the Sharif family, or whether it's the Zardaris before that, or whether it's any other party, it seems that this is a scandal that we're well familiar with and well used to within the so-called democracies of Pakistan. I mean, Shagufta's point is interesting, that Imran Khan's come along and he's made this vow to get rid of corruption in whichever corner it exists, right? Now, some of those notable individuals, even in the PTI, are from former, other parties who were not long ago accused of corruption themselves. To what extent is this a party kind of specific corruption, and to what extent is it just part of an endemic Pakistani democracy?
Yeah, I think you alluded to it quite correctly at the end. The issue is not personalities or few politicians. Actually, the issue is the system that's the system that British left when they left the region around 75 years ago. And it's a system designed, actually across the globe, it's designed for a tiny elite, which ends up accumulating all the resources of any state, basically, whether it's Britain or Pakistan or India next door or Bangladesh. So what we see in Pakistan is a result of that system, where a handful of people, they have become mega rich, super rich, basically filthy rich. And the political elites are also from this cabal, from this sort of almost oligarchy. So you have certain families, including Sharif family or Zardari families, and in fact, people around Imran Khan actually have also joined from different old school political parties. So it's all got to do with the system, basically, which is serving the interests of the very few. And vast majority of people are living hand to mouth, basically. So it's the system, not personalities.
But okay. So fair enough. It's the system. But why Pakistan? Why is it to such a degree in Pakistan? I mean, Shagufta pointed to very early in terms of some of these allegations against the Sharif families. But like I said, the Sharif families, it's not just about the Sharif families. I mean, the Zardaris and the Bhutto family have long been, accused of, corruption. It's almost, like I said, it's almost in the DNA of Pakistani politics, right? Is it just the Pakistani politics? Is it the Indian politicians are better than us? The Bangladeshi politicians are better than us? Or the English politicians are better than us? Or is it just part of the DNA of the system, Abu Isra?
I would again repeat, unfortunately, that it is part of the system. In Britain, for example, the way corruption happens. I mean, we have an understanding of corruption which relates to an elaborate financial embezzlement or bribes and commissions and what we call in Pakistan. So, for example, Zardari was once known as Mr. 10%, and some people in his later days he was called Mr. 90%. So, it's basically when we talk about corruption, we tend to look at the financial aspect of it, but the reality is that corruption is endemic within the system in terms of wherever you have access to resources in whatever form, and plus it's backed by legislation. So, for example, in Musharraf's time in Pakistan, an NRO, National Reconciliation Ordinance, was issued, and all the crimes of the political class, they were forgiven through legislation. So when political class enters and have this immense power of legislating, then they have everything. They have the key to all the resources, and this is what we are seeing basically in Pakistan.
A very quick comment from Shagufta. We have to actually break up 43, so 6:43 for the Maghrib Azan for 4 minutes, and then we'll come back and continue this conversation. Shagufta, corruption is endemic, right? According to Abu Isra in the definition of democracy. 10 facts about corruption in Pakistan: Prime Minister, Army, law enforcement, judiciary, rail, public utilities, healthcare. I'm just reading off an article. I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, do you agree with that statement, or do you think it's just a few bad apples in the system?
No, I definitely don't think it's a few bad apples in the system. I completely agree with the comments made by Abu Israr, and thank you for him for making them so well. The point that we have here, if we were to compare, and we can compare between Britain and Pakistan, we have some very robust systems in place where individuals in positions of power, whether that be at a prime ministerial level, whether that be at local city council level, it is very, very hard for them to have access to these type of funds without something being triggered into showing that there's something going on. I mean, we take data protection, we take GDPR, we take a book of information. I mean, even as a healthcare assistant or a healthcare worker, which is not very high up the ladder, if they were to access somebody else's NHS file, there would be some kind of carbon footprint to show that they've accessed that information. Same goes for the police force. So if somebody is accessing somebody else's just information, we're not even talking about financial transactions. There are triggers in place that would send some kind of online beam to somewhere on the other side of that portal to show that information's been accessed, which somebody shouldn't have, and there are controls in place. Unfortunately, Pakistan does lack that.
Right. Right, Shagufta, we've got to stop there, Abu Isra. So if I just ask you to patiently just bear with us for a couple of minutes whilst we go for Maghrib Azan, we come back. When I come back, I want to ask the question: how do we address the problem of corruption? Right. So that's a question for you to think about whilst we go for the Maghrib Azan. Producers, you can play the Maghrib Azan, and inshallah we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Assalamu alaikum. In Luton and its surrounding areas, it is now time for Salatul Maghrib.
लुटन और इसके मज़ाफ़ात में नमाज़े मग़रिब का वक्त हुआ चाहता है.
This azan has been sponsored by Ideal Properties. Contact us on 01582 72 11110 or log on to www.idealpropertiesltd.co.uk.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته.
Would you like to sponsor the Azan? If so, give us a call on 01582 481810 or email us on info@inspirefm.org.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Friday Night Live with me, Hafiz Shaban. It's Friday the 1st of October. It is just turning to 6:50 p.m. We were discussing before the Maghrib Azan the current headlines that the Sharif family are making in the UK and elsewhere with regards to corruption, money laundering, nepotism, you name it. And we were discussing, is this something just particular to Pakistan? Is this something which is particular to the Sharif family, something particular to PML, or is this something more institutional, almost part of the democratic DNA? And I think the current conclusion is part of the current DNA of the democratic systems, at least that we know as of today. Let me go straight to Shagufta and ask you the question. Just firstly, thank you very much for your patience whilst we went away for the Maghrib Azan and the Salah. Well, what do we do? What do we do with these issues that we have of corruption, right? For example, Pakistan, right? What do you think is the right steps that we need to take? I mean, there's been the National Accountability Bureau, and several other institutions that have been set up, and they themselves have been implied with corruption later, right? Is that the way forward? I mean, you referenced Pakistan and Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and Imran Khan and his, his banner of getting rid of corruption, and I think you spoke positively with regards to that. Anything that in particular that you want to cite as an example that he's actually done that's actually brought accountability, for example? That would be interesting to hear. What do you think is the solution there, Shagufta? You got in a few minutes, if you may.
I mean, I take your point, but the problem we have with Pakistan is it is institutional. It is in the DNA democracy of Pakistan. And there have always been issues with dishonesty, corruption, money laundering. And we're well used to hearing every single political party that's entered into Pakistan to be tarnished with this label, and it doesn't really do our international image any good whatsoever. So therefore, it's not doing us any favors. And I think with Imran Khan, I do speak highly of him only because that he at least has taken, or he seemed to be taking, some steps towards tackling this very huge issue. And I think
is there any evidence, is there any evidence, tangible evidence, what has he done for in the last 2 years that actually indicates the fact that, you know what, he's clamping down on corruption, and here's what he's done?
In terms of that, he's actually talking the talk. So he's talking at Medina Riyasat. He's talking about Medina Riyasat. So he's making the right noises. In terms of achievements, other than putting inflation sky high and raising prices sky high, on the other side, and I'd like to bring this other side of the argument in, and that is with Shaban Sharif and this current unfreezing of accounts. If you bring that into it, I mean, is the way being paved for the next government to be Nawaz Sharif? You know, things are looking very much in their favor. Things are just seem to be sorting themselves out. They were hanging by their throats at one point, thrown in jail, in exile, and things weren't looking too good for them. But now all of a sudden, things seem to be sorting themselves out. So is there a bigger agenda at play? And there's always a bigger agenda at play with Pakistan. What you see is not what you get with Pakistan.
No, very, very good point.
So it still remains to be seen. But is how taken.
So sorry, Shagufta, you froze for a while, but very good point actually, because when I saw those headlines too, and especially with the fact that they're all sitting in London in the first place, right? I thought, is this now the paving? They're paving the way for the re-emergence of the Sharifs back in Pakistan. Let me pose the same question to Abu Isra. Abu Isra, what is the real solution here? And is Imran Khan taking any positive steps towards eliminating corruption? Is it NCB? Is it NAB? You know, that is the way forward. And what do you make of the UK ruling with regards to unfreezing of the assets? Are you reading, the same what Shagufta is suggesting?
Yeah, I'm reading something similar. I think, as I mentioned earlier, the core issue obviously is keeping a status quo, basically. So you have a political elite class in Pakistan, and we're just simply seeing them taking turns for decades now. So one family goes, and then the next one comes, and they spend 5 years, and then the previous lot come back. So the issue here is primarily of the system, and the solution also lies in the system, actually, a systemic change, not change of faces. Pakistan was created in the name of Islam. Muslims of the region actually desire a change based on Islam. Islam, not the religion, Islam, the deen, which obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed as a deen. Deen simply means it's a complete and comprehensive code of life. It gives us guidelines, detailed guidelines, laws to live our societal lives, our state-based lives, our individual lives under the banner of Islam, basically. So this is what the Ummah in this region desired. We've seen next door in Afghanistan a change has happened, although unfortunately the early signs unfortunately are not very good, because it seems like the next door Taliban are also sticking to a global order that is ruling, and that is a global secular world order, basically. And so they also are seeking legitimacy from this order, and they're going towards China and asking for help and investment and all that. So Pakistan, the solution is, to be honest, Islam. It was created in the name of Islam. Apart from Islam, unfortunately, there is no solution. So, and it's also the Muslims in this region, they desire. I mean, in fact, I'm talking to you right now from Islamabad, and I'm telling you, the sentiments on the ground, people have completely lost all hopes now. I mean, there was some hope at the start of Imran Khan's tenure, but after 3 years of his rule, as Shagufta, our sister, mentioned, it's just inflation is skyrocketing. Prices are like 5 rupees are going up now in fuel prices. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's difficult situation for me.
All right, and unfortunately, we are running out of time, but I just want to get a last quick comment in from Shagufta. Shagufta, I know here from your introduction that You've written a number of feasibility reports for the Nottingham City Council. I think it's time you start writing a feasibility study for Pakistani government, right? I mean, Medina Riyasat, yeah. I mean, it's all great talking about the Medina Riyasat, but where is it in application? In 3 years on, where is it in application? Perhaps a feasibility study around that topic for Imran Khan. I mean, I see you've been out to interview, mashallah, Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani. Any plans of going out and speaking to Imran Khan?
You never know. You know, us journalists, we can end up anywhere in the country or in the world, taking our questions to them. And when I do go, I do ask them very hard-hitting questions, as they're all fully aware of me.
Please do that and pose those questions about the Medina Riyasat and let us know when you do get that opportunity. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. So, Shagufta, thank you very much for joining us again, as always. And Abu Saad, thank you very much for joining us from Islamabad. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair. Barakallah fi.
All right, listeners, that was Sister Shagufta Akhtar and Abu Isra joining us from both Nottingham and Islamabad, and we were discussing the problem of corruption and financial corruption specifically within Pakistan and within the Pakistani political elite. We're going to go into commercial break. When we come back, we're discussing mental health. Don't go away. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
This program will continue after the break. Continue listening to Inspire FM. Inspire FM.
Inspire 105.1 FM.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Yusuf Aslam. I'm the founder of Amazing Magazine. Please continue listening to Inspire FM 105.1. It's brilliant in what it does. It inspires Muslims all over the country.
Somewhere out there is a what to wear to work dilemma. A helping hand with a photocopier that's misbehaving. A seat on the rush hour bus. A colleague who's also a mate. An extra shift. A payday treat. And a well-earned Saturday off. You could find all this in a job that you never knew was out there. Search Job Help, the government website that can help you discover support, training and advice on finding your next opportunity. Job Help, we'll help you find it.
Attention for landlords. क्या आप चाहते हैं कि आपकी प्रॉपर्टी जल्द से जल्द किराए पर लग जाए और आपकी प्रॉपर्टी की 100% देखभाल के साथ साथ किराया भी पर वक्त मिले? तो मैरीगोल्ड रेजिडेंशियल से राब्ता कीजिए। मैरीगोल्ड रेजिडेंशियल अब प्रॉपर्टी की खरीदो फरोख्त का काम भी करते हैं। अगर आप अपनी प्रॉपर्टी रेंट पर खरीदना या बेचना चाहते हैं तो आज ही फोन कीजिए 01582 617 617 251 Dunstable Road, Luton. Terms and conditions apply.
The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "Nothing is heavier upon the scale of the believer on the day of resurrection than good character. Verily, Allah hates the vulgar, obscene person." Tirmidhi.
AK Windows South Limited, manufacturers and installers of high-quality UPVC windows and doors, bifold doors, composite doors, conservatories, porches, skypods, fascias, guttering, and much, much more. We specialize in double glazing and triple glazing using the best German profile. If you want quality at affordable prices, AK Windows is the place to go. If your house needs a facelift, you know who to trust. For a free quote, call AK Windows today on 01582 483 777 or visit us at Unit 10E, Britannia Estate, Leagrave Road, Luton.
Thinking about a fresh start? There's still time to secure a place at Barnfield College. Choose a career-focused course that's delivered in industry-standard facilities, and you'll be taking the next step towards a future that's full of exciting possibilities. Drop in for a chance to chat to course tutors, explore our campuses, and find a course that will get you to where you want to be. Open Monday to Friday, 9 till 5. It's time to think big and achieve even bigger things. Visit barnfield.ac.uk for more information.
10 सालों से आपके ताउन से एसकेटी वेलफेयर ने लाखों अफराद की मदद की है जो खुराक, रिहाइश, पानी और तिबी इमदाद की कमी की वजह से मुश्किल से दो चार थे। पाकिस्तान, शाम, अफ्रीका, यमन, फलस्तीन और बांग्लादेश में रोहिंग्या महाजरीन की मदद के लिए आपका शुक्रिया। अभी अतिया करें 0300 3020 786 या www.sktwelfare.org। रोजाना आपके सिर्फ 85 पैंस किसी को जरूरी खुराक मुहैया कर सकते हैं।
Are you an avid bookworm? Or maybe you love books, but just struggle to find the time to read? Then you need to tune into the Book Club Show on Inspire FM with Sister Imrana, where we'll be discussing a fab selection of books with special studio guests. Join us every Tuesday morning from 10 till 11 to inspire imagination and rekindle your love for reading. Don't forget the Book Club Show every Tuesday morning 10 till 11 on your very own Inspire 105.1 FM.
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 7 o'clock.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Friday Night Live with me, Hafiz Shaban. It is Friday, the 1st of October 2021, corresponding to the 23rd of Safar 1443. As usual, we are broadcasting live to Luton on 105.1 FM and also broadcasting live to our partner stations across the nation. We are broadcasting live on our social media platforms, on Facebook, on YouTube. Do remember to like us. Do remember to leave your comments on tonight's show. 01582 481 822 01582 481 822 0779 481 822. That's for your SMS, WhatsApp messages. 0779 481 822. Two very, very interesting topics that we've been discussing. I haven't received many comments and many thoughts and many opinions from our listeners. So what's wrong, guys? Get your messages in. Let me know what your experiences have been around the fuel crisis over the last couple of days. We have been discussing with a Luton Borough Council representative who's been involved in trying to manage that situation. So that was an interesting conversation in the first half an hour. And then in the second half an hour of the first segment of the show, we were discussing with our guests from Islamabad and Nottingham, and we were discussing the Sharif family and the fact that they're still in the headlines with regards to corruption and financial irregularities, right? Well, at least the UK courts have freed and unfrozen the Sharif's family's bank accounts, but of course that doesn't take them away from all of the other allegations that are out there. 0582481 822 0779 for your opinions and your thoughts. It'd be interesting to hear your comments. Right, we're going to be moving on to our next hour of the show, and the next two stories that we've got lined up for you tonight. I think we've got a very, very interesting story for the next half an hour. It's an area, right? It's an area which is probably not discussed a lot. Quite honestly, it's recently started to get a lot more of media attention. So people have been discussing it. On the back end of the COVID crisis and all of the lockdowns and the pressures that's put on people, people have started discussing a lot more about mental health. I think it's given a lot more seriousness than perhaps it was a few years ago. People are beginning to recognize the impact of mental health, right? But even when we discuss mental health, to what extent do we actually discuss mental health with regards to men who suffer from mental health, right? Men suffering from mental health, it's a bit more of I'm almost going to use that term taboo topic, a taboo subject, right? And it's not very openly discussed. And men themselves, being men, right, find it difficult to discuss certain topics. And I can understand that. And I can appreciate that because, being a man, right, you're a bit shy and a bit reluctant. You just want to take it in there. You just want to hold it in there. And sometimes you just want to take it on the chin, right? That kind of approach. And you think, what, I'm okay and I'll deal with it. And I'll just suck it up, right? And maybe, sometimes it happens for a week, happens for weeks, months. And then, when that continues over a sustained period of time, it can start impacting your health. It can start impacting you psychologically, mentally, physically, emotionally, right? And then that can have an impact on work. It can have an impact on your domestic lives. It can have an impact in your family lives. It can have an impact in your family, your friends, and so on and so forth. And that's why it is so important sometimes, right, if not all the times, for us men to, to have a conversation, to speak to someone, right? Speak to someone that you're comfortable with speaking to, right? Whether it's a domestic situation, whether it's mental health, whether it's financial issues, whether it's other issues, let's speak, let's discuss. And even if I generally speak with regards to Islam, ad-deen nasiha, right? The deen is counsel, is advice, is seeking advice, and it's encouraged to seek and speak to people, especially those people who have got an expertise in that area, right? So we're going to be discussing for the next half an hour we're going to be discussing just mental health, right? And let's discuss it with regards to men, but we can obviously discuss it in terms of women also, right? And we can discuss the subject matter generally. We've got hopefully some specialists, right? I'm not going to say experts necessarily, but inshallah, maybe they are experts to some extent, and I'll let them clarify it. And if you've got any questions with regards to what is mental health, right? Or someone that perhaps you believe he's actually suffering from mental health, right? And maybe he needs support. How do I approach this subject? How do we offer support, etc.? Let's raise those questions to the expert that we're going to be speaking to now, inshallah. We're going to speak to Brother Tabriz Khan, right? Tabriz Khan is a support lead at As-Sufa Institute, a former teacher and mentor who's led on numerous projects, mashallah, right? And who also, lends out, counseling services, prisoner support project work directly with families, individuals passionate about mental health, and feels we need to have a real dialogue around men and mental health, especially within the Muslim space. So fantastic. Great to have Brother Tabraz Khan with us. Is that Brother Tabraz? Yes, it is.
Yes,
Assalamu alaikum, brother. Great to have you on our show, right? Also, we're going to have, inshallah ta'ala, all right, we're going to have Dr. Aqil Ahmed, who's a Birmingham-based doctor who worked on the front line in acute care during the COVID pandemic, right? So he's currently also a registrar, and he's also works closely with the disadvantaged communities in Birmingham. And I think he's also involved as a long-standing volunteer at As-Sufa's homeless project. So I don't know if Dr. Aqil has joined us. There you go. Just speak of the angel, right? He's come there, mashallah. Right, so we've got a couple of experts in the house, inshallah. So as I said, listeners, 01582 481 822 0779 481 822. You can send me a question or a message as anonymous. I won't read out your name. Let's have a genuine, sincere, honest conversation around mental health with a special focus on men, right? So, Brother Tabriz, let me go to you. I hope I'm saying your name correctly, right?
Fine.
What is the issue with us men, man? Why can't we just come out with it and say, you know what, bro, I've got an issue, man. You know what, mentally, man, something's happening here. And also, I want you to address this question of what is mental health? Because if I talk about mental health, some people listening to me might think, that means something's wrong with me.
Okay.
Okay.
So let me answer your question in reverse. So what is mental health?
Ask me a question, bro.
No. Let me answer in reverse. Okay.
All right, go on.
So mental health. So there's various kind of definitions, but one way of seeing it, is your emotional and spiritual resilience to lead a healthy life. Yeah.
Emotional and
spiritual resilience.
Okay.
To lead a healthy life. Yeah.
Right.
So if you're able to deal with life basically in a good way, and you're able to regulate the emotions and spiritually, whatever, wherever you're at, you have something to kind of lean on. Generally, you say your mental health is good. So because most times when you talk about mental health, we talk about the negative kind of side. We talk about depression, anxiety, but most of us will say we can define positive mental health. So in terms of the negative things, why is it not talked about? I suppose part of it is society. Men, as you said in the introduction, men are kind of told the manly thing to do is to kind of deal with it. We should be able to kind of get through it. As you're kind of growing up, you're told about talking about your emotions is more of a feminine trait. Crying isn't a manly thing. You should just back it up. Okay, you fall over, doesn't matter. Get up. You're a man. Be a boy. Be tough. So you're told almost there's this kind of sense of masculine toxicity when we grow up.
So how do you reverse that then, right? So now, okay, so absolutely. I mean, that's how I grew up, right? That's that's what you're taught. And I like your definition, emotional and spiritual. right, well-being of an individual. But of course, I mean, subhanallah, Islam, thank God for Islam, right, that we have Islam, and it gives us that, purpose, it gives us that definition, it gives us a value, and it addresses a lot of those questions which sometimes create, right, doubt in our minds, and make it difficult for us to reconcile events with life if we didn't have Islam, right? But how do we reverse that? Because as youngsters, that's the mentality that we have, and especially the kind of culture that we come from, the Pakistani, Indian, Bangladeshi kind of culture. Bro, they don't accept or acknowledge mental health at all.
So I suppose part of this whole kind of campaign is to talk about it, talk about the issue first of all. Us as male kind of male Muslim men talking about it is the kind of start of it. Because if I told you 3/4 of suicides in the UK are men.
Seriously?
Yeah. So men are 3 times more likely to take their life compared to women, if you look at the suicide stats. Yeah. So there is an issue there. But whereas if you look at the number of people referred to mental health services by GPs, generally women are referred more often. So if they have an issue, they'll go to the doctor.
Wow.
They'll get referred to mental health services.
That's a very, very pertinent statistic there. Right? It's more likely that the men are taking their lives, but it's more women that are referring themselves to the GPs. That's really interesting, man.
Because and as you said, how do you address this? You kind of you got to have these kind of have these conversations, bring stuff to the kind of forefront to say, you know what, talking about being stressed, being because I suppose a lot of time when you say mental health, people kind of think about the kind of higher end, psychosis, schizophrenia, bipolar, those kind of high end being sectioned. But
you talk about mental, right? They think I'm pagal, man.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what people think, isn't it? I mean, so there's so much work to reverse that misnomer and misunderstanding, to say no, it's not pagal, right? It's just about life and what life throws at you, and everyone deals with it differently, and some people need that, right? So that's interesting. Let me bring into the conversation Dr. Akil Saab, right? He's listening very patiently to me, and I'm sure he wants to add his input into this conversation. Dr. Akil, mashallah, great to have you on the show. I mean, you've been working as a volunteer with As-Sufa for a long time. I know you've been working in the homeless projects. What about in this domain and this area? I mean, surely you've got a lot of experience in terms of interacting, with people. What's your observations and what's your findings?
I think naturally when we have these discussions about mental health in any community, whether that be with men, whether that be with minority groups or whatnot, inevitably we will be making generalizations. So before I even proceed to discuss further, I just want to say that every case of mental health, every case of physical health is individualistic. A person's personal story might be based on societal circumstances. It may be mentality from those around them. It can be a biological response within their body. So we have to take each case individually. That being said, I think in order to challenge certain stigmas, certain social and societal issues that men uniquely face, I think we inevitably have to talk about these things in general terms. But I think to those who are listening, who maybe feel that certain points in what we discussed may not necessarily apply to you, I just want to make that point clear to anybody who's listening.
Okay.
In regards to specifically mental health, I think myself, other people working in general practice, those working in different aspects of healthcare, we've seen a surge of issues with mental health because people are isolated, people are not getting the sense of social support that's there. With men specifically, we know that men don't have the same level of social support that women have. Whatever the reasons are, we can discuss, but essentially, when a person has an issue with mental health, whether that be a mood disorder, whether that be anxiety, whether that be fear, whether that be trauma, a lot of people are dealing with a lot of unique traumas in the pandemic, deaths of loved ones, loss of job, loss of, lots of things that they did have before they no longer have, and they don't have the social support available to give them that extra boost. So I think it's important that we give these people the opportunity to know how to seek help, where to seek help, and also that there is no shame in seeking help. Because often Tabrez mentioned about people going, well, the word bargle was used, for example. Often, not always, but often if we pick these difficulties and these challenges up early, we can prevent people from going down the route where it becomes difficult for them to manage it. Mental health is like physical health. Physical health, if you tackle the issues early on, prevention is often better than cure. With psychological, with mental health and well-being, you don't have to necessarily be labeled with a mental health illness to necessarily need some form of support or some form of help from either a professional or those around you that care about you.
Right. So Dr. Akil, take me through the kind of cycle, right? So where do we start with this, right? I mean, I'll discuss with Tabriz in terms of the initiative and how we raise awareness and how we challenge the taboo and how we readdress that. But for you, Dr. Akil, right? Let's say I, as an individual, right, I'm suffering or I'm feeling some of those, emotions that you just described, or some of those circumstances that you just described, right? And I'm feeling down, and I'm just feeling, depressed, right? All of these circumstances that you've described. Where, you take me through that process. What do I do as an individual, right?
That's a fantastic question. So
I think being in those shoes, right? Go on, take me through this, guide me through this journey.
That's fine. So if you're in a situation where you have a crisis of mental health, where you feel like you're struggling to cope, the first thing to keep in mind is you are not alone. People have gone through this. People go through these issues every single day. Yeah. And if you go onto Google and you search mental health support, there's lots of numbers and different services that are available, both locally and nationally. Samaritans is a crisis hotline which you can call depending on where you live. So, for example, in Birmingham, Birmingham Healthy Minds is you search Birmingham Healthy Minds, they have a phone number that you can call. They have a list of resources and services. If you feel, because the stigma among some people is so great that they don't even feel like speaking about their issue, you can actually type and write yourself a referral form yourself. If you find that you find it difficult, I've had many occasions where patients have spoken to me, they've called their local GP surgery, they've spoken to me as their doctor, and they've asked, I find it difficult to refer, can you refer me? And I will do the referral for them. So first and foremost, you can always make those phone calls. If you feel you're in a situation where you feel like you're going to kill yourself, if the thought of suicide is coming into your head, then call 999, call some medical support. The important thing to know is support is available. There is support available. You can, if you're not sure what to do, you can search online. You can call a healthcare organization. If you feel you're in a position where you're not in imminent crisis, but you want to learn more, NHS UK has resources depending on where you live. So, for example, Birmingham Healthy Minds. For those who are younger than the age of 16 or younger, then Forward Thinking Birmingham is a resource specifically tailored to younger people who are dealing with issues with mental health. So it's important that even if you feel that you can't seek out help from those around you, which is the initial natural response that all of us have, because for men especially, it can be difficult to do, then there's anonymous services available for you to get that support. It's just important that you get that support to begin with.
Okay, I'm running out of time. This we should have dedicated 1 hour to this conversation, to be honest with you, because it's so important, so much to cover. Tabraz, right? I'm not feeling well, right? I'm suffering in a number of different areas now. Dr. Akil's telling me, go to Google, there's this institute or that institute or this organization, that organization. You know what? I don't feel comfortable speaking to them, right? I probably feel more comfortable speaking to another bro, man. I'll speak to Tabraz, right? Or I'll speak to someone else that, who I'm more comfortable with, man. He might be able to understand me. I mean, that won't necessarily work with everyone, because sometimes you don't want to speak to another upper man because he's going to go and tell someone else, man, what's going on, right? So it's like Dr. Akil was right, it's no generalization, and every person is specific. But if I want to speak to someone, man, in confidence, who do I speak to, man?
Okay, there's different, I suppose that there's different avenues, yeah? And it depends on, look, everyone is comfortable with certain things. So we have a listening service, and we have people who kind of ring in and obviously want to speak to either
When
male
you
or
say
female.
we have, is this As-Sufa?
As-Sufa, yes, As-Sufa.
Yeah, so tell us more about As-Sufa and what As-Sufa, who is As-Sufa and what do they offer?
That's okay. So As-Sufa, we are a UK charity and educational organization, right? So we work locally and internationally. So we do adult courses, more like Islamic education. So we do Alim courses, Alimiya courses, short courses, stuff like that. We also then have outreach projects in the UK, like we have a homeless project, a food bank, we have a counseling service, a prison support project, and then internationally we run like orphanages and schools.
Okay. So is this mental health initiative part of your counseling services?
Yeah, no. So the mental health initiative really. See, when we started off the homeless project, 80% of rough sleepers are men, and when you look at the correlation as to why did someone become homeless, mental health is a big trigger.
Right.
So, and the counseling service we kind of started, and generally women were accessing it. Majority of the people who access the counseling service are women. But we, from our kind of our work, we get, people who interact with us, mental health and daily pressures are a big thing. So we've started, so we have a national campaign called National Homeless Awareness Week. But this week, we dedicated the whole week to men and mental health. So if you go to nhaw.co.uk, obviously the website's going to be updated throughout the week. So basically this week...
is that this week, yeah?
Yes, this is nhaw.co.uk. Or if you look at As-Sufa's social media stuff, Facebook or Facebook, basically, you'll see we're doing different things throughout the week. So this week we're releasing a series of kind of short videos. We got a scholar on there talking about Prophet ﷺ and his life and how the best of mankind dealt with grief. In a short space of time, his wife passed away, his uncle passed away, all his children except for one passed away. As a father, how do you deal with that? So we're talking about that. We got to see those kind of small videos to kind of encourage the conversation. So we got different people walks of life, and then we got a webinar happening on Sunday. So we got basically 6 brothers from different backgrounds sitting down having a gupshup about mental health. And you got a consultant psychiatrist there. You got just a brother doesn't from different walks of life and talking about it. And what we're hoping is from having this or watching us have this conversation online, it will start more of a general kind of trend. Because the first thing is to talk to somebody. Either talk to your mate. If you're not comfortable with that, talk to a stranger. There's Samaritans. You can ring us up. You can go online, etc. Speak to your Malana. Speak to somebody either anonymously or in person. Or don't know. The first thing is speak about it. Like for example, if I wanted to lose weight, I would read various blogs on how to lose weight. I'll speak to my mate about what works for you, gym routine. This, that, the physical health. We're okay with investing time in because we're like, we don't know how to get our body in the shape you want to get into. Mental, same thing. You gotta learn about how to get your mind in the shape you want to, because we all have. Think of like a stress container. Life is happening, and that container is getting built up. You need mechanisms to kind of deal with it. And if you don't have different mechanisms, it all fills, and that's where problems happen.
Right. So we're running out of time, unfortunately. We've got about 2 minutes left, right? So Tabraz, just last quick question for you then. So nahw.co.uk, right?
NHAW.
NHAW. That's the website for further information for people. And As-Sufa Institute, and this is part of the awareness of raising awareness. This is part of raising awareness about mental health for men, encouraging positivity. To what extent then do you find that the spiritual element and Islam actually supporting and providing that kind of a reassurance to people?
Look, I think it's a big thing. There's a verse in the Quran saying, ask the people of knowledge if you don't know. Okay. And that can be taken as the same thing. Basically, seek advice of people who know about stuff, who don't know about stuff. So going to a counselor or a doctor is
that's important. Okay, so let me ask a last question to Dr. Akil. Dr. Akil, I mean, is this something that is that the doctors need to prescribe a medication for an individual, or is it a case of it's something that is just needs to be discussed and is counseling, and it's more is it more theory, or is it more kind of as prescriptive.
I think, as I mentioned at the beginning, I think each individual case has to be treated uniquely. I think if we want to try and tackle these issues, we have to work on different ways. We have to help from the society and help to educate the society. We need to help individuals in their social circumstances. But there are some people who, despite having social support, despite changes in the community, they will still need some medication. Certainly in things that are non-mood related disorders, they need medication, and that's okay. That's if someone needs it, we shouldn't stigmatize them. That's okay. If they can find mental health without needing medication, that's great. But there shouldn't be any stigma. If someone needs the medication, that's okay.
Okay, great. Gents, unfortunately, we have run out of time. And inshallah, Jazakallah khair for joining us. This was a fantastic topic that we definitely do need to raise awareness about within our communities. As-Sufa on Facebook or nhaw.co.uk. Thank you very much for that, Tabraz. And until next time, inshallah, Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
Thank you. Thank you. All the best.
Okay, listeners, that was mental health for men that we were discussing. Very, very important topic. We had a couple of great guests there, Tabraz and Dr. Akil from As-Sufa. If you want to get any further information about that topic, then please do get in touch with us here at Inspire FM, and we can direct you towards those brothers and those experts. It is a very, very, very important topic. If you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling down, right, if circumstances are going against you, then you need to talk to someone, inshallah. I'm going to go into a commercial break. When I come back, I'll continue this conversation, and then we'll continue with the show. Until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
barakatuh. This program will continue after the break. Continue listening to Inspire FM. Inspire FM.
Inspire 105.1 FM.
My name's Rehana Faisal. I'm from Luton. I'm the Reverend Bonnie Evans Hills. I live in Kimpton.
I'm Peter Adams. I'm from Luton.
My name's Hayley and I'm from Bedford.
I'm Thakur Moraji. I'm part of Luton community here.
I'm Maureen Borthone from Sunder Park.
My name is Farzad. I am from Luton.
My name is Kathy and I am originally from Texas, and I enjoy listening to Inspire FM 105.1.
Landlords, let us take away the hassle of letting your property. Our comprehensive services include tenant vetting, rent collection and service charges, maintenance and repairs. Ideal Properties has 2 branches and have been established over 20 years and have gained a wealth of knowledge and experience.
If you are thinking of selling or letting your property, then speak to a member of our knowledgeable team about a free, no-obligation market appraisal.
We can also offer guaranteed rental income.
Contact us on either Luton 721110 or 696050. Ideal Properties. Service with a smile, whatever your needs.
Do you want an Islamic education alongside national curriculum for your child? Al Hikmah School for Boys and Girls are your #1 choice. Last year, we had the highest attainment 8 score in Luton, and the GCSE pass rate in Maths and English was 94%. We teach a full range of subjects, where you can gain up to 10 GCSEs. The school is now registered with the prestigious private school body ISA and uses state-of-the-art facilities, including indoor playing area, playing field, brand new science lab, and IT facilities. Call now to apply for your child on 01582 728 196.
If there's someone ill or you are ill from your family, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you have a problem in your life, ask Allah azza wa jal.
Whether you're looking to refresh your current bathroom or enjoy an exciting complete new design, you'll find everything you need at trade prices at Bath & Tile Superstore in Luton, with service with a smile from our super friendly staff. Why not take advantage of our 3D design service? Big names, designer brands at low prices. Bathrooms, tiles, radiators, adhesive, grouting and accessories. Visit the showroom where there's extensive stock to take away or arrange for delivery. That's Bath & Tile Superstore, Cosgrove Way, LU1 1XL. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Instagram for inspiration and updates.
I remember when I was 5, we won the 3-legged race. I remember having to drag him off the karaoke stage on Mum's birthday. And I'll never forget his face when I surprised him with a hot air balloon ride. But I also remember When they asked me if Dad had wanted to donate his organs, I didn't know. We hadn't spoken about it.
Your loved ones will always be involved. Talk to them about organ donation. Leave them certain. Visit organdonation.nhs.uk.
Do you find raising a child in today's society challenging? Inspire FM's new parenting show will be dealing with today's challenges in raising children, ranging from building sentiments through to building leaders of tomorrow. Every Tuesday with Brother Ali at 7 p.m. only on Inspire FM. From nourishing to nurturing. The Parenting Show. Every Tuesday at 7 p.m. only on Inspire FM.
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 7:30.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Friday Night Live with me, Hafiz Shaban. This is, of course, Friday Night Live on Inspire FM 105.1 FM. It is the 1st of October 2021, corresponding to the 23rd of Safar 1443. We are broadcasting live and also broadcasting live across our partner stations in Sheffield, Link FM, Peterborough, Salam, Derby, Nottingham. And not to mention, last but not least, also to mention the social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, where we are broadcasting live also. Do remember to like tonight's show, leave your comments and your thoughts with regards to our discussion tonight. Any of those stories that we've covered tonight, if you want to leave a comment or an opinion on that, then please do so. 01582 481 07779 481 07779 481 822. We are approaching the last half an hour of the show, and we are going to be discussing, inshallah, yet another story that we're going to be bringing to you. A very important story. But just before we do that, just to recap that we were discussing mental health earlier. The first half an hour of the 7 o'clock segment, we were discussing mental health, especially when it comes to Muslims. Please do refer to their website, As-Sufa. As-Sufa, that is spelled AS-SUFFA, or www.nhaw.co.uk is the address for further information. We did get a message from one of our listeners, Jazakallah for addressing this sensitive issue. Men's mental health has been a taboo subject for too long. Things are changing in the mainstream culture, but predictably, Muslims are lagging behind. Let's help our menfolk take steps to improve their mental health and thrive, not to struggle and suffer in silence. Inshallah, we need our men to be healthy mentally as well as physically. Miss Begum, Jazakallah for that comment. Any other comments? Please do get in touch with us. 07779 481 822 07779 481 822 or 1582 481 822. Last story of tonight, inshallah, we're going to be discussing and we're going to be going over to the French, right? So the French court confirms government decision to shut down Muslim organizations. Now, we've been covering this story with regards to the Muslims in France for a while. We have covered it on a couple of episodes before. And with regards to whether it's been the caricatures against the Prophet ﷺ, whether it's been, with regards to its policies of niqab for Muslim women, whether it's been with regards to some of his institutions in terms of masajids, new, legislation that's been brought in to really clamp down on the Muslim community in France. The Muslims in France are really seeing their faith and their deen and their identity really being challenged by the secular, liberal, right, French government and authorities, right? Now, most recently, an article, I think it was a few days ago, on 5 Pillars Muslim news website, France's highest administrative court has confirmed, right? So this is the highest administrative court has confirmed a government decision, an earlier government decision to shut down, right, France's biggest Muslim charity and biggest anti-Islamophobia organization. I mean, that's quite incredible. I mean, imagine Imagine that the British government decided to shut down, for example, I don't know, Islamic Relief, for example, right? Or shut down, for example, which it has tried before, Cage, right? Which is a well-known, right, anti-Islamophobia, but humanitarian human rights organization. So this is what's happening in France, and this is on the back end of already so many masajids that have been shut down and closed up in France. Now, Baraka City, right? Baraka City, which is the biggest Muslim charity in France, and the Collective Against Islamophobia in France, so an organization called CCIF, which is the collection of I guess, a number of organizations who are against Islamophobia in France, were closed down at the end of 2020. Okay, after a particular incident that happened in France, right? So we're hoping to be able to speak to Brother Roshan, who is one of the editors at 5 Pillars, right? Brother Roshan Muhammad Saleh, who's the editor at 5 Pillars. Hopefully, we're going to have Brother Roshan joining us, and we're also going to try to speak to Brother Idris Shimadi, who is the head of France's biggest Muslim charity, Baraka City, and of course, they have been at the receiving end of this legislation in France. In fact, I've just got a message to say Brother Roshan has joined us, audio only. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Roshan.
Wa alaikum salam, brother. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, good, Akhi, man. Great to have you back with us on Friday Night Live. Jazakallah khair. How are you? You okay?
Yes, alhamdulillah. Trying to get some fuel. Not having too much success, but yeah, like everyone else.
You're not parked outside a fuel station, are you? You're lined up in the queue.
Well, I actually did get some fuel yesterday, but not a full tank. Yeah, hopefully it seems to be easing a little bit.
Right, yeah, hopefully, inshallah, I'll give it a couple of days, Akhi, man, and hopefully things will get better. So we're still in a lot better of a situation than our Muslims across the channel in France, Brother Roshan, man. I mean, despicable stuff that's happening out in France at the moment. I'm sure the government in France is going to justify it under one pretext or the other. But I mean, really going around clamping down, closing down massages, closing down Muslim organizations without even actually any legitimate reason or a trial or anything that these organizations have really been accused of is quite I don't know what to call it. I mean, it's quite incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I used to live in France when I was a lot younger, and I remember feeling very uncomfortable there at the, very overt kind of racism and Islamophobia, which you don't really see here. It's much more subtle here in the UK. And we do have the same kind of issues, but it's ramped up to a different level there in France. And a lot of hijabis, especially are leaving France because, it's just one Islamophobic law after another. And as you say, they've targeted the biggest charity in France, the biggest anti-Islamophobia organization, mosques, imams, even for saying, I mean, an imam just a few months ago, he recited a verse from the Quran, which, a well-known verse where, women are instructed to obey men, and that he basically sacked by the government for that. And, you have hijab controversies, burkini controversies. It's really open season on Muslims, and they're fed up and they're intimidated and they're scared to speak out as well. And Idris, you might speak to Idris. I mean, he's had to leave the country. He's literally had to leave the country because life is too tough for him in France. So yeah, it's just open season on Muslims. They're scared to speak out, and that's why I think that us British Muslims, we have a duty to amplify their voices, because French Muslims literally they can't speak out.
That's quite incredible, isn't it? I mean, we're talking about 5% of Muslim population. 5% of the population in France I think are Muslim. We're talking about 4 million plus, 5 million Muslim, 5 million plus Muslims in France. Is that kind of statistics does it sound about right, brother?
It's probably a bit more than that. I mean, I would say 5 to 7 million. We don't have the exact figures, but it's a bigger population than in the UK, for example. And most of them will come from, Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco, the Maghreb area. But it's a huge Muslim population. And of course, I think in France, you have this secular fundamentalism. I mean, we have secularism in this country, but traditionally it's been a secularism with a multicultural bent. Whereas in France, it's pure assimilation. and you have to assimilate with French values. It's this notion of difference and living with difference, which has been the norm here in the UK, isn't the case in France. Although, unfortunately, now I think Britain as well is moving towards that French model.
But I mean, is it the case that this is just a general trend now in France? Is it a recent political events that have happened that have triggered this kind of a very harsh approach? Are the elections in the horizon, or is this just a general trend now, and this is the future if you live in France, Russian?
Well, obviously, France has suffered several terrorist attacks over the last, decade, and at the same time, it's invaded several Muslim countries and bombed several Muslim countries. So you've had these Daesh, ISIS attacks, which have been extremely bloody. There's no doubt about that. But France's response, a bit like Britain's response, I guess, is to kind of take it out on the whole Muslim community rather than go after terrorists and people who are genuinely inciting hatred, and not only attacking Muslim values and normative Muslim concepts, but as I said, Muslim institutions. But I think you mentioned the elections there. I think that's a very important point, because over the last few elections, the far right, as in the National Front, and Marine Le Pen is the head, she's been getting closer and closer to the presidential palace. She's come second in the last few elections, I believe, and the gap is narrowing. So I think Macron, who is by all accounts a failed president, he's even unpopular amongst white non-Muslim French voters, but he's trying to steal the far right's clothes, I think, because he feels that he needs to do that by to win the election, which is it this year or next year? I think it might be next year. And he feels as though he has to do that. The obvious and most popular target in terms of the wider French community, white France, if you will, is Muslims. So that's who he's going after.
Yeah. Okay. Incredible stuff. And then I mean, you cited the example of some Muslims and the hijabis that are leaving France. Obviously, the situation is just becoming almost intolerable. I mean, that's not possible for the rest of the Muslims. I mean, it may be a possible and an option for some, but not for the many. I mean, so what is the strategic position and really for those majority that have to stay and live in France, Roshan? I mean, surely, on the one hand, they've got the Islamic values, and no one's going to compromise on the Islamic values, and that's why the French are getting so rigid and so harsh now, because they realize that they're not, the Muslims are they're people of principle and values, and who hold on to the ideology. And on the other hand, there's these draconian laws that are coming in, are putting pressure on the community. Is that a recipe for cohesiveness at all, or is it just going to incite things even further and actually make it even worse?
Well, I follow, the French media a lot and French social media as well. And I have to say it, people are talking about a future civil war. Literally, both sides are talking about it in terms of, in very hushed terms. This is being mentioned in the Muslim community. In more overt terms, it's being mentioned in the mainstream French community. And there doesn't seem to be any move for compromise whatsoever from the kind of the French. And the Muslims, I think they're being asked ultimately to abandon their religion, or to kind of practice their religion in such a emasculated way that it no longer really resembles Islam. And those that refuse to do that and are vocal about that, then they're targeted. And I think what the French state has tried to do is try to take out the main community leaders like Idriss, who has a massive social media following and had an organization which made millions of pounds a year, and all his beneficiaries around the world are suffering because the French have basically frozen Baraka City's funds. And it's interesting. I was following the case when the French administrative court or high court confirmed the decision to close down Baraka City and the CCIF just last week. They basically said that their crime was that they had called the French state racist and Islamophobic. That's what they said. That's the reason for closure. They'd actually slandered the French state, which they considered to be incitement to hatred or something like that. So they didn't actually try to, they've never accused these organizations of violence, of inciting violence, or even breaking a law in France. They've literally said your crime is calling the French state racist and Islamophobic. So I mean, we're living in some kind of parallel universe here. It's absolutely crazy what's going on in France. It's outrageous and crazy, and the world needs to know about it. And there needs to be international pressure, because if there isn't, France is just going to get away with this. And you know, who knows what's going to happen? It could be literally a China-style situation where, you know, who knows, in 30, 40 years' time, Muslims may be in re-education camps in inverted commas.
No, absolutely. I absolutely totally concur, because I mean, who knows which direction the wind's going to blow in here. I mean, you know, not too long ago, I remember the civil unrest that we've known in America, across Europe. You know, are we going to see something similar? We know we've had a lot of domestic and civil unrest in France in the past. You know, is that the route that this is all going to go head down towards, right? Because on the one hand, you're talking about liberalism and liberté, and on the other hand, you're trying to shut people down from actually just expressing a political opinion, or just a general opinion. I mean, you can't have both, right? It's quite an ironic and a contradictory position to be in, unfortunately. But what about with regards to some of the other organizations? I mean, are we getting a bit of the carrot and the stick approach from the French? The government with regards to this is the type of Muslims that you need to be in? Have we got some of those kind of Muslims that have been propelled or pushed by the French government as the kind of as the yardstick against the others? Is that the kind of approach that they're taking, or are Muslims quite in unanimously in a unified position against this French legislation?
I think the French Muslim community, unfortunately, is very divided, even more divided than the British Muslim community, I would say. And they don't have a really cohesive response whatsoever. I mean, everything, brother, everything that you see here in Britain in terms of, the states and the mainstream media trying to promote certain Muslim figures, whether that be Majid and Waz or whatever, as kind of, the representatives of British Islam, kind of, these are the guys that are going to appear on the mainstream media all the time. These are the guys that are going to get around the table in Downing Street. That is amplified 10% or 10 times in France. So everything that we see here, in terms of the media and states policies against Muslims, is literally, it's 10 times worse in France. And yeah, they have. I mean, one of the most popular kind of, he's not a Muslim, he's a non-Muslim, but he talks about Muslims all the time. It's called Eric Zemmour. Just the other day, he's a presidential candidate, by the way. And just the other day, he went on TV and he basically said the name Muhammad should be banned in France.
Are you serious?
And yeah, no, this is what he said. The name Muhammad should be banned in France. Now, I think if someone went on mainstream British TV and said that, then he would be pilloried. We're still at that stage where that would cause outrage, even amongst non-Muslims and fair-minded people. But a lot of people supported him in France. It's a subject for debate there. It's like a respectable subject for debate. That's the kind of media atmosphere we have in France, where it's open season on Muslims. And yeah, it's a very, very worrying situation. And I can think of no solution other than there has to be pressure from outside, because there's no pressure inside, and Muslims are completely isolated. They're really looking to their brothers and sisters in the Ummah to really support them and tell the world what's going on.
I mean, it's quite incredible, to be honest. I mean, the kind of scenes and the circumstances that you're describing. I mean, it almost would compel me to say that Muslims will be coming together more in France than to actually, form a unified stance against this kind of a nonsensical, onslaught against the Muslim and Islam in France, and then actually be more divided. But you're telling me it's quite the opposite. But let's go down to the other point that you mentioned, Roshan, which is Muslims in Britain, right? I mean, what can the
brother?
Yeah.
Can I just interrupt? Sorry, brother. I told you, researcher, that I had to leave at 7:50 because I have to pick up my son.
No
so
problem.
I have to leave, unfortunately.
Okay, no problem, brother Roshan. Jazakallah. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, brother. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Right, listeners, that was brother Roshan Muhammad Saleh, who was joining us from 5 Pillars, who is, of course, the editor, right? Editor at 5 Pillars UK, alhamdulillah. All right, so I do have a note here that he has to unfortunately leave at 7:50. So I really appreciate that, brother Roshan Muhammad, for joining us. So he was just giving us some insight into the current circumstances in France and the Muslims in France. And we're hearing and we're seeing, right, some quite drastic policy and governance and some executive decisions being made in France. And of course, we were discussing the France's highest court confirming a government decision to ban the biggest Muslim charity in France, ban a number of masajids, close down masajids, close down institutions, close down Islamic organizations which are rallying against Islamophobia. I mean, all kind of areas that you would expect those kind of areas to be actually supported. But now you're actually seeing the lack of tolerance, right? This is really interesting, because here you have countries who talk about liberty, who talk about freedom of speech. So there's plenty of freedom of speech when it comes to attacking Islam, plenty of freedom of speech when you want to draw these disgusting cartoons, insulting cartoons against the Prophet of Islam, right? Plenty of liberty when it comes to saying anything against Islam. But hang on, when you talk about Islamophobia and you talk about the French government and the France as a country and the way it's dealing with its Muslims, then it bans you simply, and it uses its legislation and it uses its judiciary whenever it feels like it. Absolute contradiction. But hey, what can you say and what can you do? 01582 481822, 01582 481822, 0779 481822 is the number. Do drop me an SMS or a WhatsApp. Let me know what your thoughts are. How do we address and how do we deal with this kind of contradiction, right? What is the best way to deal with this blatant contradiction? I mean, how on earth, right? I mean, I remember, right? Do you remember, right, a couple of weeks ago, right, when the Taliban took over Afghanistan, right? And we saw the scenes. We saw the Taliban coming into power. We saw the scenes of everyone, the others fleeing Afghanistan. And then we had these so-called reporters coming in and saying, oh, you know what? We really feel sorry for the Afghanistan, for the women in Afghanistan. What's going to happen to the women in Afghanistan? Freedom for the women of Afghanistan. Freedom for the, this and that issue for women. Hang on. What's happening in your own country when it comes to women? So at the moment, we've seen the situation here in the UK when it comes to the women and how the women have been attacked. I mean, I find so many contradictions, right? That is quite incredible. But anyway, it's really interesting to hear what you make of it and what your thoughts are. 01582 481822, 0779 481822. Right, we're coming towards the end of the show. We were supposed to speak to Brother Idris Shimadi, head of France's biggest Muslim charity, Barakah City Producers. What happened? Were we not able to get through to Brother Idris Shimadi? It looks like, of course, we were not able to, but it would have been good to speak to the Brother Idris, who's head of France's biggest Muslim charity, Barakah City. Now, according to Brother Roshan earlier, he didn't respond. According to Brother Roshan earlier, he had to, in fact, leave France, right? So he's left France. I don't know where he is. Perhaps he's in the UK. Perhaps he's somewhere else. It would have been good to speak to Brother Idris. I mean, I did Google search earlier, Barakah City, and it seems like a fairly well-established organization, just like really any other charitable organization, humanitarian aid, right, providing a lot of different services to the community. Looks like he's doing some fantastic work, actually. got a really, really professional presence online. Idris Shamidi is the of course the manager or director, water programs, water projects, winter campaigns. Looks like it's involved in a lot of different things you wouldn't expect, right? An organization like that to have got into trouble with the authorities, and again, no good reason has been provided. I tell you, I'm reading a report here to say that really there was no day in the court, there were no allegations really brought against these organizations, there was no court procedures and anything like that. It just seems like it was a government decision to close the institutions down, right? And then that's it, legislation, and there's nothing you can do. And that's what happens. It's what we call political expediency. We'll put away the laws when we need to, and we'll change the laws when we need to, all for our own political objectives. That's what it seems like to me. Anyway, we're coming towards the end of the show. Last 50 seconds. Jazakallah khair for all of you who have contributed and who have got involved in tonight's show. Do remember to leave your comments and your thoughts on any of our social media platforms. Leave your thoughts and your comments. What did you make of any of the stories that we covered this evening? Some very, very interesting stories, alhamdulillah, that we covered tonight. Always great to bring some good stories, informative stories, educational stories to our listeners. So some of the political stories to our listeners. If there's any stories that you want us to cover in future, you can always suggest any of those topics by coming to our social media platforms and making a suggestion. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll try to take that on board. Until next week, really, it is me, Hafiz Shaban, on Friday Night Live, 1st of October, signing out. Until next week, it is Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Coming up next, English Talk Series. Continue listening.